Here in the last couple of weeks, I focused a lot on Xmonad here on the channel, and one of the reasons I've been really touting Xmonad and promoting Xmonad is because I think it's probably the best tiling window manager, bar none. I think it is the most customizable, the most flexible, the most super hackable tiling window manager there is, and it comes with the added bonus that it's written in this very cool functional programming language called Haskell, which is just a blast to learn. I know a lot of people get really scared when it comes to Haskell especially. There's this stigma about that particular programming language that it's very difficult, but trust me, if I can get around Haskell a little bit, you guys will be just fine with it. So in the last couple of weeks, I've really been hacking on my config and really digging through the Xmonad documentation and reading a lot of the various modules and libraries that are available in Xmonad. Many of them I didn't know existed, and I came across a couple of really cool things that I needed to make a video on, and that is submap keybindings and search engine prompts. So submap keybindings, let's start with that one. So let me pull up a browser here, and in the Xmonad documentation, there's a module called xmonad.actions.submap. And what this is, for those of you that are not familiar with what submaps are, if you've ever used something like i3 has a binding mode. A binding mode is basically a set of key bindings that you can use once you activate another key binding. For example, I think in my i3 config, I had a binding mode for all your session stuff, log out, restart, hibernate, suspend, all of that stuff. I think in my i3 config, it was super and then 0 on the keyboard. And then once I hit that particular combination to activate that particular binding mode, then the next key I hit actually did the action. I think I had E for exit and R for reboot, things like that. Well, Xmonad has something kind of similar. It's not exactly i3's binding mode, but it's very similar, and that's this submap. And what you do is all you need to do is import this particular module, the xmonad.actions.submap module, and then in your key bindings, you just add a key binding very similar to this example here, where they have this set to mod key plus A on the keyboard. And then once you hit that particular binding, mod A, then the next key you hit actually runs one of the following 4 commands. You see N on the keyboard runs MPC next. MPC is a terminal music client, by the way. P on the keyboard does MPC previous. Z on the keyboard would do MPC random. And space on the keyboard would run MPC toggle. That's toggle to play and pause. So let me switch over to the desktop and let me open up my Xmonad config. So I'm going to open it up in Emacs today. And this is my Xmonad config. Let me zoom in a little bit so you guys can see what's going on. And I'm going to page down to my key bindings. I have an example of a submap key binding somewhere in here. And since they did a music player in their example, I'm going to do a music player in my config. I've been using the terminal music client MOC, and you see right here, controls for the MOCP music player. And my key bindings are a little simpler than the example. And the reason is my config is using the easy config key bindings. So there is a module also in Xmonad called xmonad.util.easyconfig. And if you import that particular library, you are able then to write all of your key bindings using a much simpler format, because by default, if you don't import the easy config module, all your key bindings look very similar to this. The mod key is actually mod M. A on the keyboard is X capital K underscore lowercase a, etc. It's very weird syntax for doing your key bindings. But if you import the util.easyconfig module, then you can rewrite all of your key bindings in this much simpler to read, almost Emacs-like format, where mod key, for example, is capital M. Control is capital C. Shift is capital S. And let me show you this since I'm already in Emacs. If I did Alt X Meta X here in Emacs, you see it tells me that what I hit was capital M dash X, very similar format to what's going on in the Xmonad config. There's a command right here, toggle truncate lines, and I run that with capital C dash X, which is actually Control X space, and then followed by a T. And you see, these bindings are very similar. And my submap key bindings are very similar. You see, to actually start MOCP and play something, I would do mod key plus U, that's super U for me. And then if I hit P, it runs MOCP play. If I do super U L, it does MOCP next. If I do super U H, it does MOCP previous. And if I do super U and the space bar, that toggles play and pause inside MOCP. And just to show you that this does work, I'm going to do super U, and once I hit super U, then whatever I hit next activates one of the MOCP commands. So if I hit P for play, a song will start playing. I can't let it play too long because I might get demonetized. So let me do super U space to toggle the pause. Looks like I had the Boston Greatest Hits loaded in my MOCP player. The next thing I want to talk to you about is search prompts within Xmonad. So the ability to search whatever particular search engine or search indice that you actually are looking to get information from. And one of the cool programs out there that I love to use is a command line program called surfraw. I did a video on surfraw a couple of years back, and it is just a fantastic program. I love it. Matter of fact, I have a dmenu script that uses surfraw where, I open this dmenu and I choose the search indice I want to use. For example, Google or DuckDuckGo or CNN or the BBC or whatever it is. It has 100 different search indices. And then once I choose the search engine I want to search, then I type the actual search term that I'm searching for and hit enter. And then the dmenu script, what it does is it launches a web browser on that page, on the results page. And of course, I could just use dmenu in conjunction with surfraw inside Xmonad, but I wanted a more Xmonad way of doing this. I wanted something that didn't require, these two extra programs, dmenu and surfraw. And was there a way to do this using nothing but Haskell inside Xmonad? And there is this really cool module called xmonad.actions.search. And basically, this was inspired by surfraw, the guy that wrote this particular module. He loved the surfraw program, and he was trying to get a similar kind of effect, basically with this Haskell library here. And you can see some of the built-in engines that are already included in this module, and you can add your own engines as well. So you can actually add to the list. One thing I will notice is that this module probably hasn't been updated in a while because I see things that no longer exist. For example, IsoHunt. That particular torrent site, I don't believe even exists anymore, so that's weird that that's kind of in the list. But it really doesn't matter if some of these are broken because you can, again, add your own custom search engines. Now, setting this module up and getting this to work was a little confusing. The only thing that's really simple, if you just want to use one search engine in your key bindings, you just add a key binding similar to this, where this example does mod key plus G on the keyboard, and that runs prompt search with this particular color configuration and Google. So it actually brings up a prompt that queries Google. So if you wanted to, all you would have to do is just go up here and all the search engines that you want to use. You could have, mod A opens up a Amazon prompt, and mod G opens up a Google prompt. Mod T opens up the thesaurus.com. Mod W opens up the Wikipedia search. But the problem is, if you search a ton of different search indices, you're going to run out of key bindings very quickly, unless you make them some strange and weird key bindings, in which case it may be hard to remember the key bindings you set. What if I combined the submapping from earlier to use with this? And that's exactly what I did in my config. Let me get back into my config. I'm going to scroll up here just a little bit, and I have this section in my config. I'm going to push my new config to GitLab probably by the time I post this video, so you guys can check all of this out if you want to review some of what's going on in my code here. But what I did is I created this here search list, and I did the type here. It's a list, and inside the list it contains a string and then this type here, s.searchEngine. And what is s.searchEngine? Well, if I go back to the actions s.search module here and go to the source code, somewhere in it you will find s.search engine and then a list of search engines. And here's the list that is in the module here. You see Amazon, Alpha, Code Search. This is all the search engines. And then what you do is, now that I have created this search list here, the string part of it is just a letter. One single letter is all we're doing. That is the key binding. So that would be the key that triggers, in my case here, the ArchWiki. D triggers DuckDuckGo. Now you notice ArchWiki is just ArchWiki. DuckDuckGo is s.DuckDuckGo. What is the deal there? Well, the ones that start with s dot and then the search engine name, those are the built-in search prompts that were part of the actions.search module. As you see, string and then comma s.search engine. So DuckDuckGo, Google, images, that's Google Images. Stackage, the source, vocabulary, the Wayback Machine, Wikipedia, YouTube, Amazon, those were all built in to the module. So when I add them to the list, they are actually s dot name of engine. The ones that don't have an S, ArchWiki, eBay, News, and then Reddit, those are the custom search engines that I added. So these were not part of the module originally, but I want to add them. And the first thing you need to do is make them a particular type. You need to type them as s.searchEngine, very similar to what's going on down here. And then you need to define the search engine, and it needs to be, in ArchWiki's case, let's take this for an example. ArchWiki equals s.searchEngine space, and then in quotations, the name of the search engine. I, again, called it ArchWiki, and then space, and then in quotations, a search string minus the search query. So you see, this is how you would search the ArchWiki. You see at the end, you have the question mark search equals, and then what comes after that would be the keyword that you add. So now that I have some custom search engines that I personally wanted to add, I just make sure that I also add it to this search list that I defined here. And then let me get down to the key bindings, because this is where some of the magic happens. So my key binding listing here, and it's, I've got a ton of key bindings here. This ending bracket here is typically where your key bindings end. But you can see, with all these pluses here, I appended the key bindings. So the first key binding that I appended to the list here is mod s and then a space. This is very important to leave a space here, because this is really a submap, right? And remember, the submapping, if I go back to the MOCP submappings, mod u space and then p, mod u space and then l, because it's really two different key combinations. It's a key chord, right? You do the super u and then another letter after that. This is the same thing going on here. So I'm going to do super s and then another key combination after that. And what key combination comes after that? Well, plus k, where k is the key from this list here. Remember the search list? And then comma, and then it runs this command, s.promptSearch. Prompt search is just a search prompt here in Xmonad, space, and then dt_xpconfig. That is my xprompt configuration, so my colors and my fonts and things like that. And then space f. F is the name of the search engine. Again, we get that from the search list here. So that would be this here. It would be ArchWiki or s.duckduckgo or eBay or whatever it happens to be that we choose. Then we have the pipe symbol, and then in parentheses, k, f, and then the less than sign dash search list. It's basically saying, in this function that we wrote k and f, where are you going to get k and f? You're going to get it from search list. And again, search list is search list right here, this one that I created. So to show you this in action, I'm going to do super S, and then if I did A on the keyboard right now, I get a prompt at the top. What do I want to search the ArchWiki for? How about light DM? If I hit enter, you guys didn't see it because it's on this other monitor, but light DM in the ArchWiki just opened up in my web browser. And if I wanted to, I could do super S and then D for DuckDuckGo, and you see I get a DuckDuckGo prompt, and super S and U is the Urban Dictionary. It's one I added here, and I could do something like search for the word dank, and get back into the browser, and I get the definition for dank here in Urban Dictionary. Now, if that wasn't cool. Something that's even cooler. Let me get back down to the key bindings. The next line that I appended, plus plus, and then this here is very similar to the first key binding. The difference is I set this to super shift S and then plus plus and then key for whatever search engine I want to search. And instead of being offered a prompt to enter some input, if I do super shift S and then U for the Urban Dictionary and go to the browser, it just loaded up Google in Urban Dictionary. Why did it do that? Google is what was in my clipboard. So basically, whatever happened to have been in my clipboard, it opens up Urban Dictionary and searches for that. So I don't even have to type. If I have something in my clipboard and I know I want to search for it, instead of doing Super S and then typing it all again, no, Super Shift S, name of search engine, boom, it opens it in my browser and it immediately searches for it. And just to demonstrate that that actually works, I'm going to highlight the word offensive here, and I'm going to middle click it on my mouse. It's copied to my clipboard, right? So if I do Super Shift S and then U on the keyboard, it's going to open a tab looking up the term offensive. So that's really cool. And once I realized that I could do the submappings and then I could create, list of things to submap, I was like, well, let me look at all my key bindings because I've got a million key bindings. What else could I do some submappings with? And what else could I put in lists like this? And immediately, what I thought of is all the built-in Xmonad prompts. I did a video a week or two back about some of the built-in Xmonad prompts. It comes with its own run prompt called the shell prompt. It comes with a SSH prompt, a man page prompt, 3 different password prompts, a Windows prompt. There's about 10 or 12 different prompts in Xmonad. And I was like, well, I should submap that. As a matter of fact, I should submap it in the same way I did the search listing here. I should have a prompt list. And that is exactly what I did. I created basically a prompt list here where if I do Super P on the keyboard and then follow it with M, for example, I get a man page prompt. Or if I do Super P on the keyboard and then do a P for a password prompt, or G for generate a password, or R for remove a password, or S for SSH, or X for the Xmonad prompt. That is Xmonad controls like switching to different workspaces and stuff like that. I also created a second prompt list. You see prompt list prime here with the little single quote at the end. It is basically the same kind of list, except I needed this to be a slightly different type than the list above it. It's because my custom calculator prompt, instead of just needing 2 arguments, which is the name of the key and then the command, I needed the name of the key, the command, and then another string after it. So I've got 2 different lists depending on the format of the prompt. Well, I hope all that made sense. And let me page down and back to the end of my key bindings here. And you see I added 2 more key bindings. After the search prompts, I did Super P, and then it's taking the key and then F for whatever function it's going to run, and then it's going to use my color configuration, which I called DTXPconfig again, and it's taking all that from the prompt list that I wrote above, and then I added 1 more line, Super P, same as everything else, except it takes 3 arguments now, K, F, and G, and it's getting K, F, and G from prompt list prime. And this actually doesn't conflict. The fact that I have Super P set to 2 different things here, it doesn't conflict at all because the key bindings are not the same as far as the submap key bindings. So let me show you this in action. So Super P is for the prompt, and let me get back up to the prompt list so you can see exactly what our options are, because I'm actually not sure what my options are. So if I do Super P on the keyboard and then M, that's the man page prompt. And if I wanted to, I could search a man page. How about LS? And I get a terminal that opens the LS man page. I'm not going to do my password prompts because it's going to show you some of the sites I use and things like that. I want to actually show you the passwords, but I'd rather not do that on camera. But Super P S for SSH. It's asking where do I want to SSH into, and then of course I could type an IP address or a domain name, and we're going to SSH into that. If I do Super P and then follow that with an X, we get the Xmonad prompt, and it's got various Xmonad commands, such as switching to different workspaces and things like that. And finally, you see the prompt list prime here, Super P C opens up the calculator prompt. You see I have calc And here I could do 2 plus 2 and hit enter and get 4. Escape out of that. So just some really cool stuff that you can do with submap key bindings and the actions.search module inside Xmonad. I'm just really fascinated. I've been trying to learn Haskell here lately, so that's why I've really been reading the Xmonad documentation and the code and everything, trying to wrap my head around Haskell. And Haskell's really starting to penetrate my brain, and it's in a weird way. It's like, get out of there, Haskell. Now, before I go, I need to thank a few special people. I need to thank Michael, Gabe, Haplo, Nate, Corbinian, Mitchell, Arch5530, Chris, Chuck, DJ, Donnie, Dylan, George, Omri, Paul, Sean, Tobias, and Willie. These guys, they are the producers of the show. They are my highest tiered patrons over on Patreon. Without these guys, this episode wouldn't have been possible. The show is also brought to you by each and every one of these ladies and gentlemen, all my supporters over on Patreon, because this channel is supported by you guys, the community. If you'd like to support my work, you'll find DistroTube over on Patreon. Alright guys, peace.